I'm Emma.
I'm Shannon.
Who are you?
I'm having a great time. I'm Shannon.
And this podcast doesn't exist.
Take 2 or 3, depending.
Where I put anything.
Yes.
If you'd like to play bingo with this episode, go to our link tree in our Instagram bio and click on it. It will generate you a new bingo card every time.
Yes. And then you can play the fun game that I've been playing since the start of this, which is, am I organically funny, or am I just trying to add in references that will be on the bingo card?
Are you rigging the game for yourself?
I'm not reading the game.
No, rigging.
Oh, no. Not intentionally.
Okay.
But I did listen to our first 2 episodes and then create the bingo card.
Oh, I see.
So I feel like I put things that will pop up frequently. And if you want to know what those things are, go to our Instagram at This Podcast Doesn't Exist.
Doing it all
so
up
you
top.
Can play along.
Play along. So yeah.
What are we learning about today?
Today, my friend, y'all need to buckle in for this one because this is gonna be a lot. I know. Click. I know last week was a lot. This is also a lot, and it is the missing persons case of Maura Murray. Do you know anything about this?
The name sounds familiar.
It should. It's a pretty famous case.
We'll see if we have any light bulb moments throughout the podcast.
All right, so on February 9th, 2004, police were called to the scene of an accident off the side of Route 112 near Woodsville, New Hampshire, where a witness had claimed to see a young woman with her car waiting for assistance. When the police arrived, there was no one with the car. This young woman, Maura Murray, has been missing ever since.
I feel like, yes.
Yes, you know it?
I think I've read a couple, Medium articles because back, a year ago when we first started talking about having this podcast, but I was procrastinating and didn't have my life together, Emma mentioned that she wanted to do this, and I was like, who's that? And I went and I read some articles, but this will be a fun, probably not fun, it'll probably be terrible and sad, but it'll be a refresher.
Yes. So just up front, there is a lot of information in this and not a lot of expounding upon the theories. So there are theories and we'll get into them, but the majority of this is going to be all of the information about this case. So let's just back up a little and let's talk about Maura and the days before she disappeared. So Maura Murray was a 21-year-old nursing student who was attending the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 2004. So Massachusetts Amherst is where Jeffrey went to school.
Jeffrey!
Our previous roommate who used to live in the basement.
Thanks for the podcast futon, Jeffrey.
Yeah, actually, yes, that's true.
It's like you're here with us.
Aww. It's also where my high school best friend went to college. All right, so she transferred to University of Massachusetts Amherst after her freshman year from the U.S. Military Academy, where she had studied chemical engineering for 3 semesters.
Oh, wow.
So she's a smarty. Her dad...
Wait, she left the military to go to...
Yes, to UMass Amherst.
Okay, got it.
Her dad was a medical technician, and her mom was a nurse, so it kind of made sense that she had a knack for science. This was already, in her zeitgeist. She knew the world, and I think she was really interested in it. She was from Hanson, Massachusetts, where most of her family still lived. She had 3 older siblings, 2 older sisters and 1 older brother, and a younger brother, and although her parents were divorced, she was really close to both of them. She lived primarily with her mom, but she was pretty close with her dad. Her dad traveled a lot for work, so it made sense that she didn't, live with him, but they all were still fairly friendly. They all were very much family.
That's nice.
Yeah. She was really competitive and had been in multiple sports in high school, including track and cross country. She won a lot of awards for that, so she was really good at running. She did that competitively, consistently throughout her school career. And so that's where she got, she did it for the West Point for U.S. Military Academy too. So there's a couple pictures of her pretty close to the lead of these runs in her military like track outfit, track kit.
Very nice.
I don't do sports.
Neither do I. I just run away from my problems.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. According to her friends and family, she was bubbly, kind, a straight-A student, and pretty well-rounded. So they were kind of all surprised when things got a little weird. In November of 2003, 3 months before her disappearance, Maura was caught using a stolen credit card to buy food from multiple restaurants, including one in a town nearby her university called Hadley. The total amount of these charges was $79.02. So not necessarily a huge amount of money, but enough to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah. The charges themselves of, like, stealing a credit card were continued, meaning that they were postponed until December, and the result of that was that these charges would be dismissed after 3 months of good behavior. So basically, she wasn't allowed to get in any more trouble with the law for another 3 months. Mm-hmm. There's
clarification question.
Yes.
Based on her name and the fact that it's New Hampshire, I'm assuming she's a white lady?
Yes. So she's from Massachusetts. She's from an Irish Catholic family. She is very white. She's got, lightish brown hair. She's like white, chubby cheeks, like perfect dimples. She's very pretty. Tall and lanky, but I think it was her brother that said she was at home in either her track kit or a prom dress. Like she was that kind of person who was quintessentially beautiful. But yes, the answer is yes, she is white.
Gotcha. I was just asking because I feel like certain demographics would not receive the same generosity from the police.
Well,
maybe.
Yeah. The police are a little interesting on this to begin with, so we'll go into that.
Okay.
So there's no real explanation for why she did this, why she stole these credit cards, but it seemed like a minor act of rebellion rather than a cry for help. More of just, can I get away with this kind of thing? Because there was no real reason for her to do it.
Like, all through her K-12 education, she was, like, gifted...
Yeah,
put together
was doing really
student.
Well. Yeah,
so maybe she got to college and was like, I'm gonna be bad.
Yeah, maybe. We don't really know. Mm-hmm. On the evening of February 5th, 2004, Maura was at her campus security job when her older sister, Kathleen, called her. They spoke for a while, and around 10:30 p.m. after hanging up, Maura reportedly broke down in tears. When her supervisor arrived at her desk, Maura was apparently, quote, just completely zoned out, no reaction at all. She was unresponsive. So obviously this phone call, triggered something for her. We didn't know what the call was about until October 2017, when Kathleen herself said that the call was regarding her own struggles with alcoholism. Kathleen was in recovery in 2004 when she was released from a rehab facility. That evening she spoke with her sister. On the way home, though, Kathleen's fiancé had them stop at a liquor store, which caused Kathleen to have an emotional breakdown. And she called Maura to tell her what happened. And to basically, during her breakdown, have someone talk her down. Because obviously her fiancé was not...
trash.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they're married. I don't know how that turned out. But anyway. Mm-hmm. So the supervisor escorted Maura back to her dorm around 1:20 a.m., which is around the end of her shift. But when he asked what was wrong, all she said was, quote, my sister. Mm-hmm. So obviously she's feeling a lot of feelings about what happened to her sister, which makes me think she's a good person. Like, she's, worried about her family. Saturday, February 7th, Maura's father, Fred Murray, arrived in Amherst to help her find a car. Amherst is where the university is. Mm-hmm. Her own car was on its last legs. Like, she could still drive it and all, but it was a little shaky. So she wanted a new car. Her dad, Fred, had $4,000 in cash with him for if they found a new car when they were going around. So, for a down payment. Mm-hmm. They went car shopping that afternoon, not finding one to buy just yet, but they kind of picked out the ones that they liked. And then they both went to dinner with one of Maura's friends. They went to a brew pub in town. Fred and Maura went back to the motel Fred was staying at, and Maura went back to campus in Fred's Toyota Corolla to attend a party. She arrived at the party around 10:30 p.m., according to her friends Kate Markopoulos and Sarah Alfieri. These friends were interviewed by police later on to be like, you know, did you notice anything weird about her, anything like that? And both of them were like, no. We were at a party. She was acting normal-ish. Like, we were all drinking and having fun. Like, this wasn't something of, like sitting down and talking to her one-on-one. Around 2:30 a.m., February 8th, Maura left the party from campus. And at around 3:30 a.m., a full hour later, while on her way to her father's motel, Maura crashed his car into a guardrail near Hadley, which caused nearly $10,000 in damage. The officer who responded wrote up an accident report, but no sobriety tests were conducted according to his report, which is a little unusual for something happening at 3:30 a.m., like a crash happening at 3:30 a.m., but didn't happen. The officer took Maura to her father's motel, where she spent the rest of the night. At 4:49 a.m., Maura made a call from her father's cell phone to her boyfriend, William Rausch, whom she had met at the academy. There's no report as to what was said or even if he was the one who picked up, but they'd been dating for a while, and reportedly their relationship was pretty good. He was living in Texas at the time because he had finished at the academy, and that's where his station was. So they were in contact constantly. So that comes into play later. Later Saturday morning, Fred learned that his insurance would cover the damage so long as the report was correctly made. Fred dropped Maura off back at campus and then headed for Connecticut, which is where he was working as a nuclear med tech for a hospital. So not necessarily where he lived, like where his actual home was, but that's where his job was currently. So that's where he was staying. At 11:30 that night, Fred called Maura to remind her that she needed to get accident report forms from the Registry of Motor Vehicles, which is just the Department of Motor Vehicles in Massachusetts. Not sure why it's different, but they made a plan to talk the following night, Monday, to fill out the insurance claim and all the forms. It was after midnight on February 9th when Maura used MapQuest. Dude, do you remember MapQuest?
You better take that exit, otherwise you are
confused. You've got no hope of getting to wherever you're going.
You better do multiple U-turns to get back to where you were, because good luck.
I remember, because I was fairly young using MapQuest, because I wasn't even driving at this point when MapQuest was still a thing, but I remember printing it out for my mom in order to get to someone's slumber party or something. And I was feeling all kinds of in charge of, like, I can do this. And so I'm trying to give directions to her from the MapQuest. I'm, like, just reading the little bullet points. We got there eventually, but it was because my mom actually knew what she was doing. But I'm like, I don't know how to drive.
Nope.
I'm, like, maybe 12. It was a lot. So, yes, she used MapQuest. She got directions to the Berkshires up in northern Massachusetts, New Hampshire area, and to Burlington, Vermont, which is opposite direction, kind of.
Okay. So
rather than, because there's Massachusetts, rather than going up, it was more of going further west, towards Burlington, like middle of Vermont.
Gotcha.
Okay. The first contact anyone had with Maura on this Monday was at 1 p.m. when her boyfriend received an email that read, quote, "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promised to call today, though. Love you, Maura." Which is interesting, because first of all, she didn't use her own phone to call him the night before, which I'm not sure what the reasoning is for that. She used her dad's phone, and then obviously her boyfriend had been calling her, trying to get her to answer him, and was leaving messages to, you know, ask, "You okay? Like, what happened?" I'm sure she told him about the crash that had happened. But sent him an email instead of calling him, knowing that he, you know, would probably pick up if she called him. She also made a call to a condo in Bartlett, New Hampshire, making an inquiry into renting a place. Her family had rented there before when she was a kid, but the owner didn't rent the condo to her. At 1:13 p.m., Maura called a fellow nursing student, but we're not sure why. At 1:24 p.m., Maura emailed the supervisor of the nursing school faculty to say that she would be out of town for a week due to a death in the family, and she said she would contact them upon her return. There was no death in the family, so she just straight up lied. And she's expecting, now we know she's expecting to be gone for a week. She's planning to leave.
I feel like, yeah, that's one of the few excuses where people will kind of take it at face value and leave you alone.
Yeah, they won't ask questions.
Right, versus if you say that you're ill, maybe you need a doctor's note or something.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the one thing that no one's going to ask you any questions about. They're just going to be like, oh, okay, well, we're so sorry. Like,
let me know if you need anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at 2:05 p.m., Maura called a number that provides info about booking hotels in Stowe, Vermont. The call lasted 5 minutes, meaning she listened to the recording for that long. So it kind of sounds like she's looking for something, or at least like writing stuff down of like, maybe this place, maybe this place, maybe this place. At 2:18, she called her boyfriend and left a message promising him they would talk later. At 3:30, Maura drove off campus in her black 1996 Saturn sedan, the car that she's trying to get replaced.
Man, a Saturn.
Yeah.
They don't make those anymore.
They don't?
I don't think so.
Oh,
because
golly.
I believe my cousin Dana had a Saturn, and I think they maybe don't make them anymore.
Oh, goodness. Well, yeah, 1996 Saturn. That's an old car.
Mm-hmm. Because this is 2004.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's already an old car then, which is just crazy to think about. It's not all that long ago.
Planned
but it's
obsolescence.
Very much long ago. So a key point to know is that this is February, and classes on campus for this particular Monday had been canceled due to a snowstorm in the area. So she's driving this car that she's planning to replace in a snowstorm.
A snowstorm that's bad enough that Massachusetts said, nah, we're not going to today.
And she's driving further north. So, things are happening and we don't know what they are. So at 3:40, Maura withdrew $280 from an ATM. This was most of her bank account at this point. Like, she just basically emptied her bank account. She went to a nearby liquor store where she bought about $40 worth of alcohol, including Bailey's, Kahlua, vodka, and a box of Franzia red wine.
Oh.
Franzia.
This is sad, but that order is the most college order.
Yeah.
Please, I guess we don't know what brand vodka, but please tell me it was like Burnett's or something terrible.
Cheap. Yeah.
I mean, $40.
Yeah. $40 in 2004, like...
Yeah, I don't know what the
calculations are now.
Don't know what the alcohol inflation is like.
Nope.
But, okay.
So yeah, so she's got this all in her car. Security footage shows that she was alone. At some point during this day, she also picked up the accident report forms from the Registry of Motor Vehicles, so she had every intention of filling these out. She left Amherst between 4 and 5, most likely via Interstate 91 North. She called to check her voicemail at 4:37, which is the last recorded time she ever used her cell phone. There is no information or indication that she had chosen a destination or that she had told anyone where she was intending to go. So scary.
Yeah.
You'd think, especially with a snowstorm, you have decided to grab alcohol and drive to a different state.
Yeah, and it's a Monday.
And you're expecting
during school.
You've already told people you expect to be gone for a week.
Yeah, what's up?
Don't know. So at 7:27 p.m., a resident of Woodsville, New Hampshire, made a call to the Grafton County Sheriff's Department to report an accident outside her house up against a snowbank along Route 112. The road was called Wild Ammonoosuc Road, just all kinds of vowels in that. Ammonoosuc Road. She had heard a loud thump and could see the car through her window. The car was pointing the wrong way on the road, like the wrong way on the wrong side, and it was a sharp turn that obviously hadn't been made well. According to the 911 call, she claimed to see a man smoking a cigarette inside the car. But later, she said she had not seen anyone smoking, rather had seen what she thought was a red light glowing from inside the car. So, like, what she thought was, like, the end of a cigarette. But it could have been a cell phone. It could have been anything that was creating a red light. So that was just her initial guess when she said this. Another neighbor saw the car at the same time and reported seeing someone walking around the vehicle and the lights on. She also saw a third neighbor pull up alongside the vehicle. The neighbor who stopped, Butch Atwood, was a school bus driver returning home when he noticed a young woman, not bleeding or visibly injured, but cold, shivering, and obviously in shock. He offered to telephone for help, but she asked him not to call the police and told him she'd already called AAA, but there's no record of such a call being placed, and we know that she hadn't used her cell phone since 4:37 and never did again. Butch knew that there was no cell reception in the area, and after she turned down an offer of being driven to his home, which you could see from where the car was, to call for help, to get warm, to, like, sit down, he returned home and called the sheriff's department at 7:43.
Good job, Butch.
Yeah, so 3 people now have called the police department to report this happening.
I gotta move to New Hampshire.
I know.
People care about each other, but I hate the snow, so never mind.
He was unable to see her car from his home, from where he was calling, but he noticed several cars pass on the road before police arrived. So obviously other people have passed by. There was a report made by another local resident that she had pulled over at the scene around 7:37, which is about 10 minutes before, or not 10 minutes, but like a few minutes before the call that Atwood made. Seeing a police SUV parked nose to nose with Maura's car. When she didn't see anyone in or outside of the car, she decided to continue home. But this is contradictory to the official police report, which has the police arriving 9 minutes later. So my guess is that maybe, like, her car clock was off, or she just guessed at the time. But in any case, according to the report, this can't be corroborated. The Haverhill police arrived at 7:46 p.m. and saw no one inside or around the car. The car had obviously hit a tree on the driver's side front, like, light, damaging the left headlight and pushing the radiator into the fan, making it inoperable. So things are crunched. The windshield was cracked on the driver's side and both airbags had deployed. The car itself was locked on arrival, which is weird. Now, I was also a little weirded out by both airbags having been deployed, but from what I could gather, both of your airbags deploy regardless of whether or not they can tell that someone is in the passenger seat. Especially now, like, for a 1996 Saturn, I have no clue. I tried my best to find any kind of information, but it only led me to the Wikipedia article about what an airbag is. So
but that makes sense to me, though, that if the car detects enough damage to the front portion of the vehicle, that it would deploy both, even if it's not like it's a weighted sensor.
Exactly. It is also interesting to note that Maura was not visibly injured. Airbags, when they deploy, are extremely powerful.
Yeah, they mess you up.
Yeah, and if she hit a tree hard enough to get her fan to hit her radiator and crack her windshield, I don't know how she wasn't bleeding.
How? Okay. I have questions, but I'm sure we're going to get there, so I'm just going to wait.
Okay, hold on to them, though, because I might not answer them.
They're not specific questions. It's just general confusion. How, why, how.
Okay. So there were red stains inside and outside the car, but they looked to be red wine. And there was a busted box of Franzia on the back seat. Okay. And red stains all over on the ceiling, on the floor. So obviously when she hit this tree, this box of Franzia just busted open. So that's the explanation for the red stains. I don't know if they tested that, but that's the explanation for the red stains.
Yeah, that just makes it more confusing. If we were violent enough to, like, fling the box of wine so that it rips the plastic bag inside, but she's fine.
Or maybe it was already open.
Yeah, maybe she was getting a little sip on the road.
Maybe
that's why. Okay.
Yeah. So there was also in the car an empty beer bottle.
Oh.
But she didn't buy beer
right.
at the liquor store. So I don't actually know if you can buy beer at liquor stores. Anyway, there was in some case she had beer. Whether or not she drank it that night is another question. A AAA card issued to Maura, blank accident report forms, gloves that were brand new, CDs, makeup, jewelry, driving directions to Burlington, Vermont, Maura's favorite stuffed animal, and a book called Not Without Peril, which is about mountain climbing in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, which are nowhere close to Burlington. So odd. She also had packed herself a bag with clothing, toiletries, college textbooks, and birth control. So she had all of her stuff. Not found on the scene were her debit card, her credit cards, her cell phone, and some bottles of liquor she had purchased that afternoon. I have heard no mention of whether or not the keys were there. My guess is that she had her keys because the car was locked.
Right.
But I couldn't find anywhere where the keys were.
Right.
They also couldn't find a black backpack that they assumed that she had with her because she used it as her purse. And it wasn't in her dorm room. It wasn't with anything in the stuff in the car. So their assumption is that she had it with her. And that's where her debit card, all of her stuff. There was also a rag stuffed into the muffler pipe of the car, which Fred says was something he had advised Maura to do so she wouldn't get pulled over for excessive emissions, which was a main reason that they were getting rid of the car. I have had a car that needed to have its whole emissions stuff replaced underneath, all the guts underneath replaced because my emissions were too high. I feel like stuffing a rag in your muffler pipe isn't gonna help that. It's actually gonna make things maybe worse. I'm not sure. I don't know how cars work in that capacity, but for some reason, this tidbit of information gives me the heebie-jeebies. So much so that it's only one heebie-jeeb, and I would prefer to call it a Heebus-Jeebus. Sorry. It is so distinctly, like...
It's so odd, yeah.
It's so distinctly weird to me, and I don't know why it freaks me out, but it does.
Yeah.
It's also weird that your dad would tell you, hey, just go ahead and stuff something in your muffler that might make your car that already kind of doesn't work, that we're getting rid of. I don't know.
I, too, have very little familiarity with the mechanics of motor vehicles, but I feel like it stresses me out because, like, when people are trying to commit suicide, they run their car in a garage and
close the door,
do,
stuff the muffler, and put it in
like carbon monoxide poisoning. So then I have no idea if that's directly, I don't know, but that's just what it reminds me of. Like, are you driving emissions into your passenger, like you're into the vehicle? Is that affecting, especially if you're driving every day, is it affecting you over time? Yeah. Or something.
I don't know, but it does. It gives me the heebs.
Singular Heebus-Jeebus. Singular
Heebus-Jeebus. It just shiver up the spine.
Is that the title of this episode?
Sure. So the responding officer and Butch Atwood, so the guy that stopped.
Butch?
He's a really good guy. This haunted him for a very long time, which I'm sure, because he was the last person to ever see her alive.
Oh, that's true.
Or at least confirmed to ever see her alive. Wow. So I'm sure it really nags at him.
Yeah.
So the responding officer and Butch Atwood drove around the area searching for Maura. Just before 8, a fire truck and EMS came to clear the scene, so to say nothing else to do here. And by 8:50, the car had been towed to a local shop. Around 9:30, the responding officer left without having found anything else. So there are no footsteps, like footprints. This is fresh snow too. Like there was just a snowstorm. The car itself had like skidded into a snowbank after it hit the tree. Mm-hmm. So snow is everywhere. There should be at least some evidence of footprints going in some direction, but they couldn't find anything in particular that led them anywhere, which is just disappointing and very annoying, I'm sure. Between 8 to 8:30, a contractor reported that on his way home, he had seen a young person moving quickly eastbound on 112, around 4 to 5 miles east from where Maura's car was found. He said that they were wearing jeans, a dark coat with a light-colored hood. He didn't realize that the sighting was the same night as Maura's disappearance until 3 months later when he was reviewing his work records. Which, I mean, I guess if you're doing this all the time, like if you're driving all the time, you don't really think about when something happens. You just write it down and, you'll look at it later. But it's an odd thing to see on the side of a road after a snowstorm in February of somebody walking along the side of the road, right?
Especially in jeans. If it were a local person, I feel like maybe they would be better equipped for snow.
Yeah.
If they're just out for a little hike.
I don't know.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Don't know. But according to reports, when her dorm room was searched, there were packed boxes everywhere and art taken off the walls.
Uh-oh.
Some say that this is an indication she had intended to leave completely. Fred, her father, and others say that over the Christmas holiday, the school was washing the carpets in the dorms and asked students to box things up, which would explain why she still had items in boxes. But it was February, and she hadn't needed to take her art down.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if it was like, if she did have to take her art, or if she did have to pack up her boxes, maybe she was like, well, maybe I'll redecorate, and like took everything down so that she could like pack everything away and start new, like start fresh. And I don't want to say, well, it was February, she should have unpacked things by now, because, maybe you are too busy with college that you're like, I have a bed to sleep in, I have forks out so I can eat my food, and that's all I need. So it's a very weird tidbit of information to be like her boxes were packed, and the potential for her like leaving school was there, but there's also a potential explanation to that.
Did she have a roommate? Do we know?
If she did, I couldn't find who it was or if they had any information.
Gotcha.
A bolo was issued after this, was labeled a missing case, so be on the lookout. With a description of her, some pictures, and what she was wearing that night, which was jeans, and a black coat, and the black backpack that she used as her purse. The police left a message on Fred Murray's home answering machine at 3:20 because he was listed on the car as well, because she's only 21, remember, to say that the car had been found abandoned. But he was not home at the time because of his current job in Connecticut. So he didn't receive this message. At 5 o'clock, Maura's older sister called her dad with the news, and Fred then called the Haverhill police and was told that if Maura was not reported safe by the following morning, February 11th, they would start a search. Which, as a parent, I would be like, no, you start a search now.
Yeah.
Start a search now. I can understand maybe the light would be detrimental, but you can at least call into the woods to be like, is anybody here?
Well, especially if I guess the local police wouldn't have known that she went to the liquor store and that she had liquor potentially with her. It's gone from the car. But even alcohol aside, if you have someone who's in shock from a motor vehicle accident who walks away and you have had a snowstorm.
Yeah.
And they get disoriented and trip and fall and...
Yeah, roll down a embankment and...
sorry, 2 days is not gonna...
Yeah.
It's not good news.
Yeah.
But I presume that's not what happened, because I feel like this wouldn't be unsolved. So I'm gonna be quiet and let you tell me.
It's okay. I don't mind the interruptions.
Interjections. Show excitement. Or
and emotion.
Mostly emotion on this podcast, not as much excitement.
Also, that's a musical, so you can knock that off of your bingo list.
Boom, boom, boom. You're welcome.
Fred arrived before dawn on February 11th in Haverhill. So he drove all the way up there from Connecticut to be
He's like, it's the morning of the 11th. Let's go.
Yeah. And at 8 a.m., New Hampshire Fish and Game, which were conducting the search. So they're like the National Park Service kind of ranger people who like know the land. So this group, the Murrays and others, including locals, began the search for Maura. A police dog tracked the scent picked up from Maura's new pair of gloves 100 yards east from where the vehicle had been abandoned, but lost the scent. The police assumed that this meant that she had left in another car, so maybe one of the cars that drove by that Atwood had seen. Fred is angry about this and has expressed his anger about this because he claims they chose a new pair of gloves for the scent and not her running shoes, which were in her bag, or anything that had her scent heavy on them. Like, you could have used anything in the bag that she had packed for herself.
Yeah.
And they decided on the new pair of gloves that was in the car at the time. Odd. Don't really know the reasoning for that. At 5 p.m., Maura's boyfriend William and his parents arrived in Haverhill.
Oh.
He was interrogated in private and then joined by his parents for questioning. He and his parents are very close to Maura and her family. Like, they loved Maura. And they'd been dating, Maura and William had been dating for a while. So this was just completely devastating to both families in a sense that they both felt like they had lost a daughter. So William, had turned his cell phone off during his flight from Texas to Haverhill. At some point during the flight, he received a voicemail that he believed was the sound of Maura sobbing. They traced the call to a calling card issued by the Red Cross. Maura had received similar calling cards as a gift from Sharon, Billy's mother, around Thanksgiving. So these are like prepaid phone cards. If anyone remembers those. I remember them.
Yep.
Remember getting them for Christmas I think it must have been in high school or something. Like, not all that long ago. At 7 p.m. that day, the police said that they believed Maura to either have come to the area to run away or commit suicide. But her family didn't believe either of these to be likely. First of all, if you're going to run away, why not take the bag you packed with you?
Right.
And maybe, your jewelry, your CDs. Like, what are you doing leaving your car?
Right.
Like, maybe wait until the person at least, because she knew at least one person was going to call police, like going to call at some point, although she didn't want to. I could assume that she wanted somebody to at least try and get help for her. I don't know. Wasn't in her state of mind. A press conference was held on February 12th by Fred and William in Bethlehem, New Hampshire, and the following day, the first press coverage was published. And this has been called the first crime mystery of the social media age because it occurred days after the launch of Facebook. So this
was also in Massachusetts.
Yes. So it's just like this case became so widespread and was kind of the dawning of the internet sleuths that we know today, of like gathering information from all corners of the internet. Maura's family expanded the search to Vermont and were annoyed when they learned that the police there had not been informed of her disappearance. Now, Haverhill is very close to the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. Like, very close. So it is very weird that they didn't inform anyone over the border, hey, we're looking for this person.
But this is very standard for the time, right? Like, nobody wants to cooperate, no one wants to play nice, no one wants to share information.
I'm not sure what their thought process was, though, because aren't you hoping that maybe someone sees her somewhere else? Like, if you're going to conduct your investigation well, but I mean,
if you look at the Golden State Killer, all of his crimes took a really long time to be connected to a single perpetrator because, the Visalia ransacker and somebody over, they didn't, the departments didn't talk to each other.
But my hope is that, like, between the 70s and 80s to now, I mean, now being the early 2000s, I would have hoped that somebody would have changed something about that. But
that's true. My brain keeps thinking we're in the 90s because of her car.
But
sorry. It's 2004.
Yes, it is 2004.
All right, so disregard that.
No, I mean, I wouldn't disregard it at all, actually, because I don't know what the procedures are for these police departments, because these are also police departments of like local spaces.
Yeah, little towns.
I don't know if they're thinking that far of like put the word out so that everyone within like a 3-state radius knows. Maybe they're just trying to figure out where she is. Like, they have no footsteps, they have no car trace. Like,
they've also decided the narrative that they've landed upon, though, is kind of a victim blamey sort of mindset, that she was trying to run away and not be found, or to kill herself and not be discovered.
And I'm sure the fact that she's 21 has something to do with that too, because
I'm sure it colors their
yeah,
interpretation of things.
She's not a kid. They can't go and like do this whole big search and grab them and bring them back. Like, you're gonna be safe, we promise. Yeah. Because that little kid running away mentality, they still have guardians that are in charge of them. Once you hit 18, you are the guardian of yourself. And if you choose to run away, and this is in a couple of missing persons cases, that the assumption is that maybe they have been found, but police are not obligated to tell the families, because the person themselves might have told the police, don't tell them where I am.
Or even younger children. I mean, hopefully this happens less nowadays than it did back in the 70s, 80s. But, you know, if a 15-year-old is missing, they make the families wait a certain amount of time because, they might just be a teenage runaway. It's okay, that's not an excuse.
No, it's not. It really isn't. Oh, they're just a runaway, they'll come back, is not an excuse. Because in the midst of running away, what if they broke their leg jumping down from something because they're reckless and, like, get stuck somewhere and can't come back? Like, there's a lot of that makes me nervous about having children in the future. Of like, I can't keep tabs on them all the time because I don't want to, because they're people, but I also want to make sure that they don't die. Like, there's just so much. But I luckily don't have to worry about that for a very long time. Back to the story. Although most missing person cases are normally handled by local and state police, the FBI arrived on the investigation 10 days after she vanished. At the same time, the New Hampshire Fish and Game conducted a second search using a helicopter, thermal imaging camera, tracking dogs, and cadaver dogs. Mm-hmm. So they're like pulling in all the guns. The big guns, the small guns, all the guns are out.
Yeah.
So the fact that the FBI after 10 days is involved is interesting, but then I thought about it a little bit more of like, well, if she went over the border, then that it has to be FBI jurisdiction.
Right.
So,
or if someone across the border
abducted her,
took her, then it crosses state lines.
Exactly. So, by March 2nd, the family checked out of their motel. Fred Murray returned almost every weekend to keep searching.
Oh,
I know. It's so sad to think about. And he was driving up from Massachusetts or Connecticut or wherever his jobs were at the time. More searches were conducted later in the year with no snow on the ground, but revealed nothing conclusive. So even though, like, the snow might be obstructing something, we'll wait until it goes away, didn't necessarily help.
Yeah.
The police have said that there is no evidence of a crime being committed, though up until today it remains an open case. And in 2009, lead prosecutor in the investigation, Jeffrey Strelzin, said that, quote, it may be a missing persons case, but it's being handled as a criminal investigation, end quote. Which I feel like is the most appropriate response when you don't have a body.
Yeah.
When you don't know what happened to in a missing persons case.
Yeah.
Or at least there's no clear indication, because this is just all kinds of like crazy potentials. Maura has been missing now for 16 years with no real movement made in the case. Mm-hmm. So just sad. Some follow-up weirdness. That's my title for this next section.
All right.
In late 2004, the same year that she disappeared, a weird man, which I couldn't find his name, so I've labeled him Weird Man.
Shout out to you, Weird Man.
Gave Fred a rusty stained knife that he said belonged to his brother. This man's brother had a criminal past and lived less than a mile from where the car was abandoned. The brother and his girlfriend were allegedly acting strange in the days after Maura went missing, and the weird man claimed that he believed the knife to have been used to kill Maura. Yeah.
So you give it to the dad
and not
of
the
this
police.
supposedly murdered girl? Okay, you're mentally stable. Weird man.
Yeah, days after the knife was given to Fred, who promptly gave it to the police.
Okay, good job, Fred.
Who would want to keep a bloody, rusty knife that could have potentially killed my kid? Like,
wait, is it bloody and rusty or just rusty?
No, it's both.
Oh, great. Okay.
So, just a disgusting knife. Well, it's stained. It's not bloody. It's stained, but still,
Okay.
Days after the knife was given to Fred, the brother apparently scrapped his car, but other family members of the weird guy claimed he made the story up in order to get reward money in the investigation and that he had a history of drug use and drug abuse. So the potential is that the reason he gave it to Fred was so that Fred would give him the money. But it's just...
That's just sad.
Yeah.
Don't prey upon sad people.
Yeah. There was a black backpack found behind the bathroom facilities at the Pemigewasset Overlook, which was 30 miles away from where Maura was last seen, a year after she disappeared. The backpack was still there in late 2005 when a Discovery thread user, so like the investigation threads that popped up after her disappearance of like, here are the possible clues in order to find her, went to go see if he could spot it and reported that he found it and it was empty, and got in contact with the police telling them where to find it. So like, he didn't have a camera with him, so he couldn't take pictures. He did open it up to see if there was anything inside, and there was nothing in it. It was frozen solid apparently because it was cold. It was late 2005. The police said later that they were aware of the backpack, but nothing was disclosed on whether they did any testing or did anything with it at all.
Okay.
So just another weird little piece. Follow-up weirdness. This is why this is labeled this way. In October of 2006, another search was conducted within a couple miles of the crash site over the course of 2 days. In a closet of a home approximately 1 mile from where the car was left, cadaver dogs allegedly went, quote, bonkers, which meant they picked up a scent of human decay. The house previously belonged to the man initially implicated by his brother, who had given the knife to Fred.
Oh, okay.
A carpet sample was taken from the closet, but the results were never released, and nothing conclusive was ever found from this search. Yeah. In February of 2019, so fairly recently,
okay,
which was 15 years after Maura's been gone, Fred said that he believed his daughter was dead, and that the cadaver dogs picked up the scent of her body back in 2006. The house was sold to a new, more cooperative owner. So the owners previous to this, but after the initial search of the house, weren't very cooperative, didn't want the police in the home.
Okay, so the house belonged to the knife guy's brother.
And then was sold to somebody else who cooperated with the police.
And they took the carpet sample.
And then was
uncooperative people. New people.
And so in early April of 2019, these new owners allowed the investigation to proceed on the property. And an excavation was conducted of the basement, but they found absolutely nothing except for, quote, a piece of pottery or old piping. So there's no evidence of a body being there, which doesn't necessarily indicate to me that she wasn't potentially killed there if she was killed or abducted by this man. Maybe she just wasn't buried there.
They didn't search the property. They only looked in the basement.
So far as I could tell, they conducted a search of just the house.
I guess the dogs would have alerted something in the initial search if it were outdoors.
That's my sense, but I don't know. All right, so here are our theories.
Okay.
1, she was suicidal. But everyone in her family and all of her friends say that this is both an odd way to try to kill yourself and that it is so unlike Maura. Fred, his ex-wife, and Maura's mother, Lori, and William's mother, Sharon, are all very vocally critical of the official investigation, as using this as a point of, this is what happened. They say she was not suicidal. It makes no sense at all to assume that she was, based on the evidence. Fred and Sharon remain so. They remain critical. Though sadly, Lori, her mom, passed away from cancer in 2009. Oh. So she won't, or maybe she does know the answer. She might know the answer now and be at peace knowing the answer. Because I feel like the main takeaway from this for me is the fact of not knowing as a parent or like a pseudo-parent, someone who's, you know.
Yeah. Like, I don't believe in closure. I don't think it exists. Whether it's like a romantic relationship, a terrible event that happens, I don't think it really exists. But at least, you know, if the snow had melted and they had found a body, it would be terrible. But at least, yeah, you would know. Because when you don't know, even if all the evidence is pointing towards, yeah, she's probably no longer living, the irrational part of your brain is still clinging to that tiny bit of hope of,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, we don't know.
Exactly.
So, and then you just go through that your whole life. I
can't imagine that being.
It's hard.
It also doesn't make sense that she was suicidal if she packed a bag and her birth control, and though the alcohol may be an indicator of a possible issue, it doesn't explain a suicidal tendency specifically for this period of time. Mm-hmm. So she's looking up all these different places to potentially go and travel. She's trying to find somewhere to stay. She's trying to, like, pack for a week with her college textbooks, fully intending to do her homework. Yeah. So, like, it's odd. Another theory is that she was in shock after the accident and died in the woods beyond the road, though no footprints were found from the elements. Shock makes sense. Death from the elements doesn't necessarily make sense because her body was never found, and neither were any of her things, though the searches that they conducted often didn't extend too far beyond a few miles radius, and they didn't go too far deep into the woods. So that, to me, is like, you didn't do your job well enough.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Number 3, she was running away, which is the one that most people cling to because it means that she's still alive and well. Most everyone close to her says that it doesn't make sense for her to run away, but the signs of her packing, not telling anyone where she was going, and the like packing up her dorm room as well, make this a possibility, but then where would she go? She had a map to Burlington in her car, but she had a book about the White Mountains. She had researched all of these different places in Stowe, Vermont. Like, there's too many different potential destinations. I'm not quite sure where her brain was in terms of where she's gonna go.
The part of me that wants to believe in, like, positive outcomes is, we're just, here's my theory. She was like Carmen Sandiego. She was a spy, and she was leaving misleading clues so that nobody would know how to find her and be purposely confusing. To purposely confuse everyone, and she's off on a beach somewhere right now, having retired from her career as a spy
days.
I don't know, but she can't contact her family because then that'll put them at risk.
I would like to assume that is the case.
That'd be...
Her and Tupac are sitting on a beach in Cuba.
Throwback.
He's making sounds for SoundCloud, and she's just enjoying a mojito.
Yeah.
I'm into that.
Yes, please.
So, she had gotten into trouble with the credit card stuff. She had crashed her dad's car, and February was still within the time frame of her needing to stay out of trouble unless she wanted to be charged with the crime and go to jail. Mm-hmm. So maybe the party and her recent crash made her worry that if the police were called, she would have to serve time.
Well, and if she was drinking the boxed wine in the car, or even had it open.
There was that. Others have suggested that she may have been leaving to meet someone or to run away to have a baby. There was a big thing about her being pregnant and worried about having a baby while in college, and so running away to, like, have the baby.
Yeah. Pregnant people don't need birth control.
But neither of these seem to make any sense, as no one has come forward, and she brought her birth control with her. If you are pregnant, or if you assume that you are pregnant and you know you're going to keep the baby enough to run away somewhere, like, why would you bring your birth control with you? Why wouldn't you just leave that where it was?
Yeah.
So, she also turned in all of her homework for that week before leaving and told her supervisors that she would be coming back by the end of the week.
Right.
So that doesn't make sense. Some believe that her father knows a lot more than he is letting on, since he has been angry throughout this whole investigation, which I think rightly, because the police haven't really helped anything too much, it seems. And he dislikes anyone trying to ask him questions for publications about his daughter's days leading up to the disappearance, because he's questioned constantly about this. And he's said, I have put out all the information I know, all of the things I believe. You know all of the information. You don't need anything else from me. Please stop bothering me about this. I am looking for her constantly. He, however, says that he believes that she was taken and killed, and is now gone. She would have had no reason to want to run away. He knows that he's like, there's absolutely no reason I can think of that she would run away. But most people think he knows more than he's saying, because he had $4,000 in his pocket, and he, like, you know, let her drive his car, like, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, it's a dad. He's trying to help his daughter find another car, knows that a cash down payment, especially in 2004, like, is helpful. Like, come on. And there have been multiple but unsubstantiated sightings in Vermont and Canada of Maura, but very much unsubstantiated. So the last theory is the saddest one. And that it is that she was picked up and killed. And it's not necessarily a specific serial killer that did this, but rather just an opportunity one who saw a girl all alone in the middle of nowhere, it seems. But this doesn't necessarily make too much sense to me, because the people who lived across the street from this crash were probably looking out their window trying to make sure that this person that they could see was okay. I'm not quite sure how long they looked out the window or like anything like that, but I mean, if it were in front of my house, I'd be sitting there until the police came, at least to be like, what happened? Like, yeah, I'm nosy, so I want to make sure that, you know, what's happening, I can like ascertain what's happening. But no one knows. Since there's no trace of her, there can be no reason to assume this, but it may be the reasoning why the house nearby flagged for human decomp.
That, you know what makes that so extra sad to me? Is that our buddy Butch, the school bus driver, like, offered to take her back to his house to be warm, and as a young woman alone, she probably was like,
stranger danger.
You're not taking me to a second location, which I'm sure is what both of us would do if we were in some sort of situation. I don't fault her
for that.
You know? But if she was taken and murdered, like, you know, she was trying to avoid something like that maybe by not going with him, and then who knows what happened to her.
And the span of time, it was 7 minutes. Butch saw her, asked if she was okay, asked if she wanted to come back so she could be warm and call for help. Even if it wasn't the police, I'm sure if she had taken him up on his offer, I'm not faulting her for not, because truly, I probably would do the same thing of like, nah man, I'm good. But if she had gone with him, she could have like called her dad or one of her sisters or even her like mom or grandparents and been like, hey, this happened, can you get someone to come and pick me up? Rather than having to actually call the police or AAA or just like, you know, you call a tow truck, you like all that. But I can completely understand not going to a second location with someone you don't know in the middle of the night.
Because not middle of the night, it's like 7, but like... But still, it's winter, basically, still, and she's not from the area. It would be one thing, you know, if it's your hometown and... You know the bus driver. Yeah, and... Not saying that makes better. That person totally safe 100% of the time, but at least you have a degree of familiarity. Yeah. And the just the amount of time between Butch leaving her and the police arriving, 7 minutes. It took her 7 minutes to disappear. Might have taken her like 3 seconds to disappear, but it's like there's a span of time
that we can calculate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so sad that 7 minutes completely makes her vanish.
Yeah.
So this is my theory.
Okay.
You've expressed your theory.
I think.
Maybe.
I mean, because they didn't do a super extensive search of the woods, my mind thinks that that's the most likely one.
Yeah. That's fair.
It's sad and unfortunate if people didn't. I just feel like you read sad and unfortunate articles about Midwestern teenagers or college kids who like go to a party and they drink and they try to walk home and they trip into a snowbank and freeze to death.
Yeah. Or like get disoriented because everything's white.
Yeah.
And they've just hit their head and then just disappear into the snow and die.
Yeah.
So my theory is that I believe that her sister Kathleen knows more than she's letting on, or was the intended person to stay with Maura at any of these locations. The reason I think this is that I think Maura may have been arranging a space for her sister to have another rehab because of her fiance being a total jerk and bringing her to a liquor store and making her go into a huge emotional breakdown, potentially going into relapse, like all of that. And I think Maura may have been trying to establish somewhere that at least for a week she could stay with her sister and help her get back to where she was in rehabilitation and know that she's going to be okay. This is somewhere like Bartlett, the condo place, was somewhere that her and her family had visited before. Mm-hmm. So that was a familiar place to her. Like, if she could find a place for her and her sister to stay for a little while, she brought alcohol maybe to be like, you can't have this, like this is, all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure why. Maybe that's a little weird to me.
Yeah.
Maybe for herself to be like, I gotta get through this. I don't know. But I think when she crashed, she was completely scared by it, of if the police are called, they're going to see the empty beer bottle, they're going to see the alcohol in my back seat, regardless of whether or not she actually drank from any of it that night, and they're going to assume that I am driving drunk and that's why I crashed. I am going to grab my bag with my credit card and my ID, and I'm going to lock my car so that if anyone does call the police, which is possible because I just met this guy who said he'd call the police for me and I told him no, I'm going to grab my bag and go into the woods and wait until the police are gone and the car is like towed or something. And then I'll come out and go knock on that guy's door and call someone to come and pick me up. That's what I think where her brain was. But I think I agree with you that the potential for her just becoming too exposed to the elements, especially in a space she doesn't know, if she goes into the woods deep enough and knowing that someone is looking for her when that police officer comes and when or Atkinson comes back, to like know that they're searching for her, so she goes deeper and deeper into the woods.
Nope.
And then gets exposed to the elements and can't find her way back because she's disoriented in a woods she doesn't know, and passes away. That's what I think the potential is. Which is so sad. What I really wish happened was that she got picked up by some nice trucker who was like, where can I take you? And she went all the way up to Canada, the land of the beautiful, and met a Mountie and is like, sorry, William, I loved you, but I found a new stud. I'm starting a life with a Mountie with the gigantic leg things and a huge hat. Like, and she's living happily ever after in, like, Newfoundland. I would really love that.
Yeah. I feel like that's what we're going to do every episode. We're like, let's imagine the Hallmark movie ending to
Seriously.
this. But also the investigation discovery ending.
Seriously. So if you want to learn more about this, and I'm not one to usually quote my sources because I put them in the show notes anyway, but I think that the sources for this are fairly interesting as well as important. So there is still a site for Maura run by her family. It's called the Maura Missing Site. Maura Murray Missing Site. And it's still active. You can go to mauramurraymissing.org, and there's places on there where you can see pictures, her beautiful little face, pictures of her and her family, the press releases that they've had about this case, any information you might have, you can give to them, as well as go through the Haverhill Police Department to, if you do have info and you've been holding it back all this time. Moving on. Of course, our mother site, Wikipedia, was my starting point for this, but it led me to a Billy Jensen article from 2014 about internet sleuthing in this case, which is, if you haven't listened to The Murder Squad with Billy Jensen and Paul Holes, it is brilliant. They do mostly cold cases in an effort to get people to participate in internet sleuthing in a good way. But also to try and figure out, what are the best ways that we can help the police departments who are trying to investigate and figure out these cases.
They're also legitimate investigators.
Oh, yeah. No, they do their research wholeheartedly and very well, and it's all very good. And Paul Holes, of course, is a retired police officer, police detective. And Billy Jensen is a true crime reporter. Like, they know their stuff. But I haven't ever read anything by Billy Jensen. Mm-hmm. And so reading this article was beautifully crafted. He's a wonderful writer. And it's obvious that he feels very strongly about this kind of stuff. And even then, it was 2014, so it was 10 years after Maura went missing. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about internet sleuthing and how it all started. So, like, that's what he does. That is his thing. So it was very interesting to read that. There's also a book called True Crime Addict on Google Books that I read the first 26 pages of because it's oddly expensive. But this is also the book that Fred Murray, he and the author got into a huge fight about this because Fred was so upset with the way that this man was investigating this case, and truly just wanted to be left alone from this guy, and he was relentless. The first 26 pages, I will say the writing is a little interesting. It seems very elaborate. Since I have not read the whole thing, I cannot give a full review, but it had enough information in it for me to include it in this because it did reveal, at least when it came to like the boyfriend of like, this is when he came, this is where they met, this is all that. I didn't get a lot of that from other sources, so that was helpful. And if you want to listen to another podcast about this particular case, there is a podcast called True Crime Garage. They are awesome. They are also very good at their research, and they did a 2-parter on this. All of their library is on Stitcher. So the last 30 weeks, the last 30 episodes or something are on Apple Podcasts, but this is from about a year ago. So you'll find them on Stitcher. It's all free. All their library on Stitcher is free. So you'll be able to find it there. But they're also just very good researchers. They do their job really well. And they're the reason why the rag in the tailpipe gives me the singular Heebus Jeebus, because I was listening to it with Theo one night. We were doing a puzzle because that's the kind of old people we are. And we were listening to this podcast, and I had to stop with the puzzle and just sit there and listen because there were just shivers going up and down my spine of them telling this story. I'm not quite sure why this gives me so many heebie-jeebies and even that one singular Heebus Jeebus. I'm just going to keep saying it because I'm serious when I say it, though, that it truly does. But yeah, so those are my sources. Feel free to go and check them out. They will be linked in the show notes. I have a couple pictures here that will be up on Instagram of Sweet Maura.
Aww.
There's also a picture of where the car was found and the car itself and its damage. Not on the site, because obviously you'll see the picture. There's no snow. But it's to where it was towed. And they took some pictures of it then. But yeah, so this is a sad case, and it's still unsolved, and she's currently gone to the wind. You okay?
I feel like I talked about this on an earlier episode, but I am someone who likes answers in a definitive sense, which means I've really just set myself up for disappointment by doing this podcast.
Seriously.
But yeah, no, shout out to Maura. Say hi to Tupac for us.
Seriously. You and your mojito.
Yeah.
Or if you're up in Canada with your Mountie husband, like, hope you're doing well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing those sources with us.
You're welcome.
I would say you are also well researched.
Oh,
so
thank you. I appreciate that.
Undersell yourself.
Thank you. I think there's so much to this case. It is just dense with information and like timeline and all of that I think it's easy to get lost in it. And I felt that when I was researching this, is just getting lost in the tiny little tangents. But there's a lot of meat to it. There's a lot to it. So I'm happy I did it. It's one of the cases that drew me to all of this. So
yeah, everybody call your mom.
Seriously.
Or your dad, or tell your friends when you're going on a road trip, please.
Yes.
Be safe.
I've got to go on a road trip this weekend to get my tooth taken out by the bone shaman.
The bone shaman.
My own father, the bone shaman. He's licensed and certified. He's not just...
That's just in the backyard. Step onto the deck.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's good at his job well enough that I fully trust him. He's my father. But I don't like surgery, so it'll be an interesting weekend. But the hubby is coming with. He'll have to do his data processing there, which will be interesting.
But... Well, that's the thing about data. It travels easily.
Yeah, it's easily accessible.
I mean, yeah.
Before we go, I didn't ask you. Last night was Halloween, y'all.
Oh.
How was your Halloween?
It was fine. I was at work at the bookstore.
Woot woot.
I gave out candy to like 3 small children.
Aw.
Just because there weren't that many, but that was fun. It was a full moon. It looked very spooky. At least this year and last year, Halloween has not been that significant as its own individual holiday because we don't really get trick-or-treaters on our street.
Yeah.
We don't have a street light and there aren't that many houses. So it's not so much, oh, happy Halloween. It's more, oh God, it's NaNoWriMo Eve.
Oh yeah,
like
Shannon
the
is
night
doing
before.
NaNoWriMo.
Aren't you doing it too?
National Novel Writing Month. I am going to do portions of
Just say yes.
Yes.
You're doing it.
Yeah?
You got it on tape. You
Okay.
did it first.
That was a bad trick.
By the time you all hear this, we'll be like halfway through. More than halfway through.
Yeah. I will, because I started it last year and I didn't.
Yeah, and I really want to read it. I want to read it, so.
Didn't obviously finish mine.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to see photos from today's episode, you want to see the car, you want to see the spooky looking woods, no thank you. Sorry, New Hampshire, but
no thanks.
Hard pass.
Yeah.
You can find us on Instagram at This Podcast Doesn't Exist, no apostrophe. And you can also find our Linktree bio, our Linktree link in our bio. So many words.
Yeah, it is.
Where you can find us on all the listening platforms, even though obviously you've already found us on one of those, but
then you can share it to the friend who has an Android on Google Podcasts.
Yes, there you go.
Shelby.
Shout out to Shelby. And you can find our bingo card there as well. Please take a screenshot and share it on Instagram. We'd love to see it. We'd love to see how it's going.
And if you end up winning a bingo for a episode, make sure you send it to us because we want to shout you out and say thank you for listening, first of all, but also congratulations for winning. And it's just an easy, fun thing to do while you listen. You know, if you're not doing laundry like I usually do when I'm doing podcasts.
Or driving.
Or driving.
Please don't bingo and drive.
Yes. Amen. All right. And if you have any stories you want to tell us, any theories about what possibly could have happened to Maura or what her thought process was, you can email us at thispodcastdoesn'texist@gmail.com. no apostrophe. And we'd love to hear from you. Truly. Our inbox is currently empty. Please fill it.
Yes, it doesn't have to be specifically related to this episode. We will accept feedback, suggestions,
Seriously.
Stories. Also, I had this thought the other day. If there are any conspiracy theories or weird things that you believed as a child that you did not learn were false until later in life, we'd love to hear those too. We just come be our friend. We'd love to include you. And speaking of inclusion, please share the podcast with a friend. If you think they would enjoy it, they would enjoy hanging out with us, we would love to have them. And while you're at it, please subscribe, rate, and review.
Yeah, give us a nice little 5 stars, please. If you don't want to give us 5 stars, you can go ahead and not rate or review, but instead send us an email as to what we could possibly do better in your eyes or your ears. So, all that to say, thank you for listening.
And remember,
this podcast doesn't exist.